The alarm bells rang through the council station like screaming metal birds. Ambassador Veltar pressed his 4 hands against the vibrating walls and felt his heart's beating too fast. In 300 years of service, he had never heard the emergency bells ring this long. The great doors of the council chamber slid open with a heavy grinding sound. Representatives from 47 worlds rushed inside, their different voices mixing into chaos. Some spoke in clicks and whistles. Others used light patterns on their skin. A few communicated through smell clouds that made the air thick and strange. Veltar took his place at the curved table. His neighbor, a crystal being from the shard worlds, was flickering between red and white. That meant fear. Veltar knew because fear felt the same in every language. "Order, we need order." The council speaker banged her staff 3 times. The noise cut through the panic like a knife. Speaker Mordoon was old, even by eternal standards. Her silver skin had seen wars end and peace begin. When she spoke, people listened. "We have a crisis," she said. Her voice carried to every corner of the massive room. 3 days ago, we lost contact with Research Colony 7 in the Kepler system. Veltar felt his stomach drop. Research Colony 7 was home to the Zephyrians. They were plant people who had never hurt anyone in their 1,000-year history. They spent their lives growing food and medicine for other worlds. They had no weapons. They had no armies, they only had gardens. "Show us the last transmission," Speaker Morden said. The lights dimmed. A blue screen appeared in the air above the table. Static filled the air with crackling sounds. Then a voice came through, high, and musical like wind through leaves. It was speaking Zephyrian, but the translation scrolled beneath in Council Standard. "This is Researcher Bloomtel at Colony 7. We are under attack. The ships, they are not in our database. They are alive somehow. Metal that breathes. Metal that feeds." The transmission crackled with interference. When the voice came back, it was shaking. "They have taken 12 of our people. We can hear them screaming, but the screams are wrong. The screams are getting weaker, as if something is drinking their voices, drinking their life. We are hiding in the deep root chambers, but they are finding us. They know where we are, even when we make no sound. They can smell our fear." A new voice joined the first one. This voice was broken, like glass trying to speak. "The taken ones. We can still sense them. They are alive, but hollow. Empty shells that used to be our friends. Something has eaten their insides and left the outside walking around. They walk like us, but their eyes are black holes. When they look at us, we feel cold in our roots." Static grew louder. The voices became harder to hear. "We tried to send for help, but our communications are being twisted. Every message we send comes back changed. Our words become their words. Our calls for help become invitations for others to join us. Do not come. Do not wait. Something is wrong. The walls are bleeding. Metal does not bleed, but these walls are bleeding light. The light tastes like death." The transmission ended in a scream that was not quite Zephyrian. It was something else wearing a Zephyrian voice. The council chamber fell silent. Veltar could hear his own breathing. It sounded too loud in the quiet. "Our peacekeeping fleet arrived at the system yesterday," Speaker Morden continued. 3 ships with our best crews. They sent 1 scout ship to the colony planet." She paused. Her silver skin had turned dark gray. The scout ship sent back 1 message. 2 words in Council Standard. "They hunger." Then nothing. We lost contact. With the entire fleet 6 hours later. The crystal being next to Veltar was now flashing pure white. That was terror beyond measure. "What kind of enemy can destroy a peacekeeping fleet?" asked Council Member Zexhai. His voice came out as electronic clicks, but the translation made his fear clear. "Unknown," Speaker Morden replied. "Our computers have no record of these ships or these beings. They appear to be biological and mechanical at the same time. They use technology we do not understand. They can find hidden things. They can change our communications. And they seem to consume life force directly." A representative from the gas giant colonies floated forward in her containment suit. "What do our experts recommend?" All conventional rescue attempts have failed. These entities adapt too quickly. They learn from each attack and become stronger. Our weapons seem to feed them rather than harm them. The chamber erupted in panicked voices again. Representatives were standing, waving limbs and appendages, speaking in 50 different languages at once. Silence. Speaker Mordun's staff rang like a bell. There is one option we have not considered. She gestured to a small screen at the side of the chamber. On it was a blue and green world with white clouds swirling around it. Every representative recognized it immediately. Earth, whispered someone. The humans have dealt with similar entities before, Speaker Mordun said. Their files contain references to what they call soul reapers and psychic parasites. They have developed specialized response teams. You mean they're military? Said Council Member Crixavoll, his scales turning deep purple with worry. Not their regular military. Something else. Something they call special operations. When we asked about their capabilities, their response was classified. They would only say that some problems require particular solutions. Veltar felt a chill run through his fur. Everyone in the galaxy knew stories about human military units. Humans were the only species that seemed to enjoy fighting. Other races fought when they had to. Humans fought because they were good at it. Are we seriously considering asking the humans for help? The voice came from Council Member Techmore of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance. They are barely civilized. They solve every problem with violence. They also save people, Speaker Mordun replied quietly. When the plague ships attacked the mining colonies, human medical teams saved 40,000 lives. When pirates took
hostages at Station Omega, human negotiators brought everyone home safe.
They are violent, yes, but their violence serves life, not death. The chamber fell quiet again. Everyone was thinking the same thing. They were afraid of the humans almost as much as they were afraid of whatever had taken the Zephyrians. We vote, Speaker Mordun declared. All in favor of requesting immediate human military assistance for a rescue operation? Slowly, reluctantly, most of the representatives raised their hands, claws, tentacles, and light patches. They were scared. But they were more scared of doing nothing. Motion passed. I will send the transmission immediately. As the chamber began to empty, Veltar stayed in his seat. He stared at the image of Earth still glowing on the side screen. Somewhere on that blue world, something was about to wake up. Something that scared pirates and plague bringers and everything else that hunted in the dark. He hoped they were making the right choice. He feared they were about to find out what monsters really looked like. The human response came in 18 hours. That was faster than anyone expected. Most species took days just to decode an emergency message. Humans had read it, decided what to do, and sent ships. Admiral Kethmore floated in his command ship at the edge of the Kepler system. His tentacles gripped the control panels as he watched the scanner screens. 3 council ships remained from the original rescue fleet. The others were still out there somewhere, but they did not answer calls. Sir, his communications officer said, we have incoming ships. Very fast. Very big. Show me, the Admiral ordered. The main screen lit up with sensor data. What they saw made every crew member go quiet. 5 ships were dropping out of hyperspace, but these were not like any ships they knew. Council ships were smooth and round, built for peace and exploration. These ships looked like they were built for war. The lead ship was black as empty space. It had sharp angles that seemed to cut through starlight itself. Strange symbols were painted on its hull in red that looked like old blood. The ship's engines glowed blue-white, and energy readings showed power levels that made the Admiral's scales itch with worry. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. His voice was shaking. Put it through. The screen changed to show the inside of a human ship. The Admiral had seen humans before, but never like this. The human on the screen wore armor that covered everything except her face. The armor was black with silver edges, and it seemed to absorb light around it. Her eyes were the color of winter, storms, and when she looked at the screen, the Admiral felt like prey. This is Colonel Sarah Chen of the United Earth Special Forces ship Retribution, the human said. Her voice was flat and cold, like metal in deep space. "We received your request for assistance." Admiral Keithmore tried to make his voice sound calm. "Colonel Chen, we are grateful for your response. The situation is very dangerous. We have lost contact with a research colony and 3 of our ships." "We know," Colonel Chen replied. "We reviewed your transmission and all available data during our jump. The entities you are facing are designated Soul Reapers in our files. We have encountered their kind before." The Admiral felt his heart skip. "You have fought these creatures?" "Fought them, studied them, learned how they hunt." Colonel Chen's face showed no emotion. "They feed on life force and fear. They can enter minds and twist thoughts. They turn victims into hollow shells that look alive but are not. Standard weapons and tactics are useless against them." "Then, how do we save the colonists?" the Admiral asked. Colonel Chen was quiet for a moment. Behind her, the Admiral could see other humans moving around. They wore the same dark armor and moved with frightening silence. Each one carried weapons that hummed with energy he could not identify. "Admiral, I need you to understand something," Colonel Chen said. "What we are about to do is not normal rescue operation. This is something else. Your people call us monsters sometimes. Today you will see why." The Admiral's tentacles curled with nervousness. "What do you mean?" "The Soul Reapers think they are the apex predators. They believe nothing hunts them because nothing has ever hunted them successfully. They are wrong." Colonel Chen's eyes grew darker. "We are going to show them what real predators look like." Another human appeared on the screen. This one was larger than Colonel Chen, with scars on his face and arms that told stories of old battles. He wore no helmet and his hair was gray as old steel. "This is Sergeant Major Torres," Colonel Chen said. "He leads our extraction team. He will explain the operation." Sergeant Major Torres stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "Admiral, we need you to pull your ships back to minimum safe distance. What we are about to deploy cannot tell the difference between friend and enemy once it starts hunting." "What are you deploying?" the Admiral asked. Torres smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of something that enjoyed difficult work. "Us." The transmission switched to tactical display. The Admiral watched as the human ships moved toward the colony planet. They did not fly like normal ships. They moved like living things, flowing around gravity wells and asteroid fields as if they were swimming through water instead of space. "Sir?" the sensor officer called out. "I am reading massive energy buildups from the human ships. They are charging weapons I cannot identify." On the screen, the human ships began to change. Parts of their hulls opened like flowers blooming in reverse. Strange devices extended from their bellies, devices that made space itself shimmer around them. "What are those?" the Admiral whispered. His science officer looked up from her station. Her fur was standing on end with fear. "Sir, they appear to be dimensional anchors. They are sealing off the space around the planet. Nothing can enter or leave through hyperspace." The Admiral understood. The Soul Reapers used dimensional rifts to escape when fights went badly. The humans had just trapped them. Colonel Chen's voice came through the communications again. "All Council ships maintain position and monitor. Do not approach the planet under any circumstances. We are beginning descent." On the sensor screens, smaller ships launched from the human vessels. These were not normal landing craft. They moved too fast and made no sound that sensors could detect. The Admiral counted 12 of them dropping toward the colony planet like silent meteors, Admiral. His communications officer said quietly, "We are receiving transmissions from the planet's surface, but they are not from the colonists." "Show me." The screen filled with static, then cleared to show something that made the Admiral's tentacles go limp with horror. It was a Zephyrian, but wrong. Its plant-like skin was gray instead of green. Its eyes were holes filled with darkness. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through dead leaves. "New ships come to feed us," the thing that used to be a Zephyrian said. "More life to harvest, more fear to drink. Come to us, metal swimmers. Come let us show you how good it feels to be empty." The transmission cut off. The Admiral stared at the blank screen and felt sick. That thing had been a person once. Someone with thoughts and feelings and hopes. Now it was just a shell that something else wore like clothing. "Sir," the tactical officer called out. "The human landing craft have reached the surface. They are... I do not understand what I am seeing. Show me." The screen switched to orbital view of the colony. The Admiral could see the human craft landing in perfect formation around the settlement. Then the humans themselves appeared on thermal scanners as they left their ships. But they did not move like humans. They moved like ghosts, flowing across the ground without disturbing anything. Their heat signatures were strange, as if they were running colder than normal humans should be able to survive. "Those readings cannot be correct," the science officer said. "According to sensors, those humans are barely alive. Their life signs are so low they should be in medical emergency." The Admiral watched the thermal images and felt understanding creep up his spine like ice water. The humans had done something to themselves. They had made themselves less alive on purpose. They had become like the things they hunted. On the communications channel, Colonel Chen's voice came through one more time. It was quieter now, almost a whisper, but somehow more frightening than when she had been speaking normally. "All stations, be advised. We are beginning infiltration of the harvest site. From this point forward, consider all movement on the planet's surface to be hostile. We have 12 teams in the field. Each team knows how to become what the enemy fears most." The Admiral looked at his crew. Every face showed the same expression. They had asked for help from monsters. Now they were about to learn what monsters really did when someone hurt the innocent. In the distance, the colony planet turned slowly in space, unaware that something darker than Soul Reapers was walking on its surface. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez moved through the colony ruins like smoke with legs. His boots made no sound on the broken ground. His breathing was so quiet that even he could barely hear it. The armor he wore was not just protection. It was a hunting skin that made him invisible to the things that fed on fear. Behind him, his team of 8 soldiers moved the same way. They communicated through hand signals and tiny vibrations in their helmets that the Soul Reapers could not detect. Each soldier carried weapons that hummed with energy, designed specifically for creatures that existed between dimensions. The colony had been beautiful once. Rodriguez could see that in the twisted metal and burned gardens. The Zephyrians had built their homes to look like giant flowers growing from the earth. Now those flower homes were black and withered, as if something had sucked the life from them. "Contact ahead," whispered Private Chen through the comm system. Her voice was so quiet it was almost just a thought. 3 shells moving through the market area. Rodriguez held up his fist. The team stopped moving instantly. Through his scope he could see what Chen had spotted. 3 figures walked between the ruined market stalls. They looked like Zephyrians, but they moved wrong. Real Zephyrians flowed like plants in a gentle breeze. These things jerked and twitched like broken toys. "Confirmed shells," Rodriguez whispered, back. "Hollowed out and repurposed. The real Zephyrians are somewhere else." One of the shells turned its head toward their hiding place. Its eyes were empty holes that seemed to go on forever. When it opened its mouth, no sound came out. But Rodriguez felt something cold try to crawl into his mind. That was when his training kicked in. The humans had learned something important about fighting Soul Reapers. The creatures could enter minds that were full of normal thoughts and feelings. But human soldiers had learned how to make their minds into places where nothing wanted to live. Rodriguez let his thoughts become cold and sharp. He remembered every friend he had lost in battle. Every mistake that had cost lives. Every moment of pain and fear he had collected over years of war. He wrapped those memories around his mind like armor made of ice and suffering. The shell trying to enter his thoughts hit that wall of controlled darkness and recoiled. It made a sound like breaking glass mixed with a dying scream. "They know. We are here," Rodriguez said into his comm. "Beginning harvest protocol." His team moved forward. They did not try to hide anymore. They walked toward the shells like death taking a slow walk. The creatures that had been Zephyrians tried to run, but human soldiers were faster. Private Chen reached the first shell and touched it with a device that looked like a small metal flower. The device hummed for 3 seconds, then beeped once. Life sign detected inside the shell, she reported. Real Zephyrian still alive. Extraction possible. Rodriguez nodded. The Soul Reapers did not kill their victims. They hollowed them out and wore them like clothing while keeping the original person trapped inside, aware but unable to control their own body. It was a living nightmare that could last for years. Extract and contain, Rodriguez ordered. Chen pressed the device against the shell's forehead. Blue light flowed from the metal flower into the creature's empty eyes. The shell screamed and fell to its knees. Then something impossible happened. The gray, dead-looking Zephyrian began to change. Color flowed back into its skin, its eyes, filled with light instead of darkness. The rescued Zephyrian looked around in confusion, then saw the human soldiers and began to shake. "The harvest," it whispered in its musical voice. "They put me in a cage made of my own skin. I could see everything but control nothing." "You are safe now," Rodriguez said gently. His voice had become warm again, nothing like the cold thing it had been during combat. "Where are the others?" "The biolab," the Zephyrian said, pointing toward a large building that looked like a giant seed pod. "They keep the living ones there. They drink from us slowly, like wine that never runs out." Rodriguez felt anger build in his chest, but he kept it controlled. Anger was a tool, not a master. "How many?" 43 of us went into the deep chambers when the attack began. I do not know how many are left." The human soldier helped the Zephyrian to its feet. "Chen, escort the survivor to Extraction Point Alpha. Call for medical support. Rest of the team, we move on the biolab." As Chen led the rescued colonist away, Rodriguez studied the seed pod building through his scope. Heat sensors showed massive energy readings inside and something else. Life signs that pulsed in patterns that made no sense. Some were too strong, as if something was feeding extra life into them. Others were too weak, barely registering as alive at all. "Sergeant," came a voice through his comm. It was Lieutenant Torres from Team 3. "We have found the source. There is a ship underground bigger than our scanners first detected. The Soul Reapers have been here for weeks, not days." Rodriguez felt his jaw tighten. Weeks meant the creatures had time to set up a full harvesting operation. They would have guards, traps, and worst of all, they would have learned about human tactics from the peacekeeping ships they had captured. "Team 2, what is your status?" he asked. "Biolab perimeter. Secured," came the reply from Corporal Martinez. "But Sergeant, you need to see this. They have done something to the building itself. The walls are breathing." Rodriguez looked at the seed pod structure again. Now that Martinez mentioned it, he could see a slow, steady movement in the walls. The building was alive, or had been, made alive by whatever was inside it. "All teams, listen carefully," Rodriguez said into his comm. "We are not just extracting prisoners. We are entering a living digestive system. The building itself is part of the creature now. Standard breach protocols will not work." He pulled out a device that looked like a small silver egg. When he pressed a button on top, it split open to reveal something that glowed with soft white light. Every human soldier carried one. They called them hope bombs. "We go in quiet and fast," Rodriguez continued. "Remember your training. These things feed on fear and despair. We give them something else to choke on." As his team moved toward the biolab, Rodriguez activated his hope bomb. The device began to emit a frequency that Soul Reapers could not digest. It was the sound of human determination, the vibration that came from beings who refused to give up no matter how dark things became. The building's breathing slowed, then stopped. Something inside was choking on hope, just as planned. "Breach in 30 seconds, Rodriguez whispered. "Let us show these things what happens when they try to harvest the wrong neighborhood." His team reached the entrance to the biolab. The doors were not metal or wood. They were made of something that looked like skin stretched over bone. When Rodriguez touched them, they felt warm and wet. "Entry point is biological," he reported. "Switching to anti-organic protocols. Each soldier pulled out weapons that looked like long needles filled with silver liquid. The needles would inject something that Soul Reapers feared more than any conventional weapon. They would inject pure, undiluted human stubbornness, concentrated into a form that killed creatures who fed on surrender. "Doors are opening," whispered Private Singh. "I can see movement inside, multiple hostiles, and... oh no." "Report," Rodriguez ordered. "Sergeant, they have turned the survivors into living batteries. The Zephyrians are suspended in pods that glow with their life force. But they are still conscious. They can see us." Rodriguez looked through the opening, doors, and saw hell made real. Dozens of Zephyrians hung in organic pods that pulsed with stolen life. Their eyes were open and aware, tracking the human soldiers with desperate hope. Around the pods, things that had never been alive moved like shadows with teeth. These were not shells. These were pure Soul Reapers, creatures of hunger and darkness that existed only to consume. "All teams," Rodriguez said quietly. "We have found the nest. Beginning extermination protocol. Remember, we are not here to fight fair. We are here to win." The Soul Reapers turned toward the humans and opened mouths full of absolute darkness. They expected to see fear. Instead, they saw something that made them hesitate for the first time in their existence. They saw humans who had looked into the abyss so long that the abyss had learned to be afraid of them. The Soul Reapers attacked with the fury of creatures that had never been challenged. They flowed through the air like liquid darkness, their forms shifting between solid matter and something that existed only in nightmares. Their mouths opened to release psychic screams designed to shatter minds and leave victims helpless. The screams hit the human soldiers and bounced off like rain hitting stone. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez felt the attack wash over him and smiled. It was not a nice smile. The Soul Reapers were trying to break his mind by showing him his worst fears. But Rodriguez had spent years learning to live with his worst fears. They had become his friends. "Contact," he said calmly into his comm as darkness with claws reached for his throat. Multiple hostiles engaging, beginning counter-harvest. He fired his needle weapon at the nearest Soul Reaper. The silver liquid hit the creature and spread like infection through its form. Where the liquid touched, the creature began to scream in frequencies that made the air itself hurt. The thing that fed on despair was learning what human determination tasted like. It did not like the flavor. Around him, his team moved with deadly precision. Private Chen danced between attacks that would have killed normal soldiers. Her movements, flowing like water as she injected liquid stubbornness into creatures that had never felt doubt before. Private Singh rolled under a psychic blast that cracked the biolab walls and came up firing hope directly into a Soul Reaper's core. But the humans were not just fighting. They were rescuing. Corporal Martinez reached the first pod containing a suspended Zephyrian. The organic prison pulsed with stolen life force, and tubes of living metal drained energy from the trapped victim inside. Martinez placed her hands on the pod's surface and activated devices built into her gloves. "Extraction device online," she reported, beginning life force reversal. The pod shuddered and began to crack. Green light flowed back into the Zephyrian as its own life energy returned. The creature's eyes, which had been dim with exhaustion, brightened with hope. Behind Martinez, a Soul Reaper materialized from shadow and reached for her with claws made of crystallized fear. The creature expected to find an easy target focused on rescue work. Instead, it found Lieutenant Torres. Torres had been moving through the biolab like a ghost with a gun. His job was not extraction. His job was elimination. When the Soul Reaper reached for Martinez, Torres was already there with a weapon that hummed like angry bees. "Bad choice," Torres said quietly and fired. The weapon did not shoot bullets or energy beams. It shot concentrated human rage, refined and purified until it became poisonous to creatures that fed on negative emotions. The Soul Reaper hit by. The blast began to dissolve like sugar in acid rain. "Another pod freed," Martinez called out as the Zephyrian she had rescued stumbled free from its organic prison. "Victim is weak, but alive." Across the biolab, other human teams were working with the same deadly efficiency. They moved like a machine designed for one purpose, turning predators into prey. Every Soul Reaper that attacked them learned too late. that humans had become something the universe had never seen before. They had become professional monster hunters. "Sergeant," came a voice through the comm. It was Specialist Park from Team 4. "We have a problem. There is something bigger in the back of the lab. It is not moving yet, but the energy readings are off the charts." Rodriguez finished injecting a Soul Reaper with liquid courage and looked toward the back of the biolab. Through the organic walls, he could see a shape that made his enhanced vision struggle to focus. It was huge and wrong, like a tumor made of condensed darkness. "Describe what you see," he ordered. "It looks like a queen or a mother," Park replied. Her voice was steady, but Rodriguez could hear controlled fear underneath. "It has dozens of feeding tubes connected to it. I think it is what has been coordinating the harvest. And Sergeant, it is waking up." The shape in the back of the lab began to move. Walls that had been breathing slowly started to pulse faster. The remaining Soul Reapers stopped their individual attacks and began to retreat toward their queen. "All teams, priority shift," Rodriguez announced. "Extraction teams, accelerate rescue protocols. Combat teams, establish perimeter around the queen. Do not let it reach the pods." But even as he spoke, Rodriguez knew they had a problem. The queen was not just bigger than the other Soul Reapers. It was older, more experienced. It had fed on thousands of worlds and learned from each victory. When it moved, reality bent around it like heated metal. The queen's voice filled the biolab when it finally spoke. It did not use sound. It spoke directly into their minds with words made of crystallized terror. "Small creatures," it said. "You taste of metal and fire. Your fear is different, sharper, more useful. I will keep you alive for years, sipping your despair one drop at a time." Rodriguez felt the psychic pressure trying to crush his thoughts and turned it into fuel for his anger. "Teams, listen up. This thing thinks we are afraid of it. Let us show it what human fear really looks like." He reached for a device on his belt that none of the soldiers wanted to use. It was called a terror reverser, and it was the most dangerous weapon humans had ever created. It took everything that made a person afraid and turned it inside out. "Sergeant," Torres called out. "Are you sure about this? The reverser has never been tested on something this big." "First time for everything," Rodriguez replied and activated the device. The terror reverser began to hum with power that made the air around it shimmer. It reached into Rodriguez's mind and found every nightmare he had ever experienced, every moment of helpless fear, every time he had been certain he was going to die. Then it gathered all of that terror and pointed it at the Soul Reaper Queen. The effect was immediate and horrible. The queen, which had been flowing toward them like a wave of living hunger, suddenly stopped. For the first time in its existence, it felt what its victims felt. It experienced the crushing weight of absolute terror. It learned what it was like to be prey. The creature that had fed on fear for millennia began to scream. "All teams, advance," Rodriguez ordered. "Hit it with everything. It is vulnerable now." The human soldiers moved forward like wolves closing on wounded prey. They fired their specialized weapons in coordinated volleys. Hope bombs exploded around the queen, filling the air with frequencies that burned creatures of darkness. Stubbornness. Injectors pumped determination directly into its form, but the queen was not helpless. Even wounded by its own reverse terror, it fought back with desperate fury. Psychic blasts cracked the biolab's living walls. Tentacles of solidified nightmare lashed out at the advancing humans. "Martinez is down," came a call from Team 2. Psychic feedback knocked her unconscious. "Singh is trapped," reported Team 3. "Queen has him pinned behind a collapsed pod." Rodriguez saw his soldiers falling and felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear, not anger, something worse. He felt the calm that came to human soldiers when they decided that retreat was not an option. "All teams, this is Rodriguez," he said into his comm. His voice had become flat and emotionless like steel speaking. "We are switching to final protocols. No survivors on their side, no prisoners, no mercy." He pulled out the last weapon in his arsenal. Every human soldier carried one, but they were only supposed to use it if everything else failed. It was called a humanity bomb, and it contained something that no other species in the galaxy possessed. It contained the concentrated essence of what humans became when someone hurt their friends. "Teams, deploy humanity bombs on my mark," Rodriguez ordered. "Let us teach this thing why the galaxy calls us monsters." The Soul Reaper Queen sensed the change in the humans and tried to retreat, but it was too late. The humans had stopped being soldiers. They had become something else. They had become what they really were underneath all their civilization and training. They had become the thing that even nightmares learned to fear. The humanity bombs went off all at once. The biolab filled with something that had no name in any galactic language. It was not light or sound or energy. It was the pure essence of what humans became when they decided that something needed to die. The Soul Reaper Queen felt it hit her like a wave of molten steel. For the first time in her million-year existence, she understood what terror really meant. This was not the simple fear she fed on from other species. This was something far worse. This was the knowledge that she had made enemies of creatures who did not know how to give up. She tried to scream, but the sound came out wrong. Instead of the psychic wail that could shatter minds, she made the noise of something that had learned it was not the apex predator after all. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez walked through the chaos with his humanity bomb still glowing in his hand. Around him, his soldiers moved like death-wearing armor. They were no longer rescuing prisoners, they were exterminating pests. "Final pod extraction complete," reported Corporal Martinez, who had recovered from the psychic blast. "All Zephyrian survivors are free and moving to safe distance." "Understood," Rodriguez replied. "Begin building sterilization." He activated a device that sent signals to charges his team had planted throughout the biolab. The charges were not explosives. They were something worse. They contained concentrated human stubbornness, mixed with pure determination. When they went off, they would make it impossible for Soul Reapers to ever use this place again. The Queen sensed what was happening and made one last desperate attack. She gathered all her remaining power and tried to force her way into Rodriguez's mind. She pushed through his defenses and reached into his memories, looking for something that would break him. What she found there made her recoil in horror. She saw a human child version of Rodriguez, small and afraid, hiding in a closet while monsters killed his family. She expected this memory to be a source of weakness. Instead, she found it was the source of his strength. The child in the memory was not just hiding, he was making a promise to himself. A promise that when he grew up, no monster would ever hurt anyone again if he could stop it. The Soul Reaper Queen realized she had made a terrible mistake. She had not just attacked a soldier, she had attacked someone who had spent his entire life preparing to kill things like her. "You do not understand," she tried to say through the psychic link. "We are eternal. We have harvested 1,000 worlds. You cannot destroy what has existed since the first star died." Rodriguez looked at her through the mental connection and smiled. It was the same smile he had worn as a child when he promised himself that monsters would pay for what they did. "Lady," he said quietly, "you picked the wrong species to hunt." He triggered the building sterilization charges. The biolab began to collapse, but not in any normal way. The charges released energy that attacked the building's living components, turning organic walls back into dead matter. The breathing stopped. The pulse of stolen life force faded. Within minutes, the structure that had been a harvesting factory became just a pile of ordinary rubble. The Soul Reaper Queen tried to escape through dimensional rifts, but the human ships in orbit had anticipated this. Their dimensional anchors held the fabric of space locked tight. There was nowhere to run. "All teams, sound off," Rodriguez called through his comm as his soldiers gathered the rescued Zephyrians and moved toward extraction points. "Team 2, all present and accounted for," came Martinez's voice. "Team 3, ready for extraction," reported Torres. One by one, all the teams checked in. They had lost no one. Every human soldier was walking out alive, carrying Zephyrian survivors to safety. But they were not done yet. "Orbital Command, this is Ground Team Actual," Rodriguez called to the ships above. "Primary objectives complete. Beginning secondary protocol." "Copy that, Ground Team," came Colonel Chen's voice from the command ship. "Secondary protocol authorized. Make sure they never come back." Rodriguez and his soldiers spread out across the colony ruins. They planted devices that looked like small silver flowers, the same type they had used to free the shells earlier. But these flowers were programmed differently. Instead of extracting life force, they would inject something else. They would inject memory. When the devices activated, they filled the ruins with recordings of everything that had happened here. The psychic screams of the Soul Reapers as they died, the sound of their queen learning what fear meant, the vibration of human determination, turning predators into prey. Any Soul Reaper that came to this place in the future would experience those memories. They would know that this world was protected by something that hunted the hunters. "Memory beacons are active," reported Specialist Park. "Any of their kind that approaches this system will know what happened here." "Good," Rodriguez said. He looked around at the ruins of the colony one more time. The Zephyrians would rebuild their flower homes. The gardens would grow again. But something else would remain too. A warning written in the language of nightmare. "All teams, we are done here," he announced. "Time to go home." The extraction ships came down from orbit like silent meteors. The human soldiers loaded their rescued civilians and prepared to leave. As they lifted off, Rodriguez could see through the ship's windows that other human vessels were arriving. These were not military ships. They were hospital ships and construction vessels and supply transports. The humans were not just good at fighting monsters. They were good at healing the damaged monsters left behind. 3 hours later, Admiral Kethmore watched from his command ship as the human fleet prepared to return to their patrol routes. The rescued Zephyrians were safe in medical bays, recovering from their ordeal. The Soul Reaper threat was eliminated completely. Colonel Chen appeared on his communications screen one final time. She had removed her combat armor and looked almost normal now. "Almost. Admiral," she said, "the survivors are stable and ready for transport to medical facilities. We have purged all Soul Reaper presence from the system. Your people can return, safely." "Colonel Chen," the Admiral said, "I must ask, how did you know how to fight those creatures? How did you develop weapons that could defeat them?" Colonel Chen was quiet for a moment. When she answered, her voice carried the weight of old battles and hard choices. "Admiral, humans have been fighting monsters for as long as we have existed. We learned long ago that the only way to protect the innocent is to become better at being dangerous than the things that hurt them. Soul Reapers feed on fear and despair. We gave them something they could not digest." "What did you give them?" the Admiral asked. "Hope," she replied, "and the knowledge that no matter how dark the universe gets, there will always be someone willing to walk into that darkness and drag the innocent back out." The human fleet began to move away from the Kepler system. As they prepared to jump to hyperspace, Colonel Chen sent one final message. "Admiral, please understand something. Today you saw us at war. That is not who we want to be. We prefer to explore and learn and make friends with new species. But when someone hurts the innocent, we become what we need to become. We hope your people never need to call us for help again, but if you do, we will come." The human ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Council fleet alone with the rescued colonists and a galaxy that had learned something new about the species from Earth. They were not the monsters. They were what the monsters feared in the dark. Admiral Kethmore composed his report to the Galactic Council as his ships escorted the medical transports carrying the Zephyrian survivors home. He wrote about the successful rescue and the elimination of the Soul Reaper threat, but at the end, he added something else. Personal note. We have always wondered why humans seem to excel at warfare, despite claiming to prefer peace. Today I learned the answer. They do not fight because they enjoy it. They fight because they love something enough to kill for it. That something is the idea that innocent people deserve to live without fear. Any species that threatens the innocent will discover that humans have made themselves into the most dangerous thing in the universe, guardians who refuse to let evil win. In the distance, the Kepler system star shone bright and clean, as if the darkness that had touched it had been burned away by something even brighter. The monsters were gone. The protectors had come and gone, and the innocent could sleep safely once again.